Hey friends, it's Chris McKenna with Protect Young Eyes, and it's this week's tech news and trends for May 30th, 2024. We're just a bit late because of the Memorial Day holiday here in the United States on Monday, but this is our process where Isaac and I from the team, we go out, we find the news that matters, we summarize it, because we want you focusing on your kids and how to raise them. We want to take what we find, distill it down into little bites so you can use that to determine what's best for your kids so that you can create safer digital spaces for them. We have 7 things we want to talk about this week, so here we go. Item number 1, I want to talk about a post on John Haidt's Substack. Now, as many of you know, John is the author of The Anxious Generation. I've got it right here, right? Been through it. I'm sure a lot of you have read it too. If not, please go pick it up. But on his Substack, which explores all different angles of the smartphone and social media issues that we find ourselves in today, he talked about happiness in a recent post, right? Great topic. Over 600 articles since the 1970s have been posted about human happiness. And what John explores in this post is the U shape that we typically see with happiness. So if you take an x-axis and you put happiness, our age, starting from birth to death across the x-axis, and we put happiness on the y-axis, right? Low happiness to high happiness, humans typically follow a U-shaped curve. You're happiest, very happy during childhood, and that takes a bit of a dip during midlife, which I'm taking pretty personally right now because I just turned 50, although I'm not dipping. And then it goes back up as you hit retirement and your wisdom years. But since 2017, when you ask young adults ages 18 to 25, they're reporting now, self-reporting, least happy compared to everybody else. So the curve is flattened out. Now we can speculate, and the post goes into possible reasons, and a lot more research is needed here. And I want to reiterate, it's not just social media. I'm sure that that's a part of this, right? When you're constantly comparing what is probably a good life to an algorithmically driven, like perfect version of everybody else's life, of course you're not going to feel like you measure up. But I just think the rest of it is just too much too soon. There's always been horrible things that have happened in the world, war and famine and climate and all this kind of stuff. But now we know it all the time. We know all the tragedies all the time in constantly streaming news. And I think for many of us, particularly young people, it's just too much too soon. And I want at least for us to be aware of these things so we can have good, honest conversations because even our young kids are seeing all kinds of things, not just social media, but all kinds of news and horrible world events all the time. And we need to be engaged with them in loving, age appropriate ways. Item number 2, the Washington Post put out an article with 9 different ways to use social media etiquette, right? 9 different tips that it gives. They were helpful. A couple of them were really helpful. And the first one in particular is one that we want to focus on, that we need to be careful with photos. In other words, don't take photos and post them of your kids, which we agree with. We talk about this in our parent presentations all the time, and it gives posts around only sharing them privately or in small groups of people, right? Posting with permission, asking your kids if you have their permission to post their photos with a lot of people, right? It's great to prove to your kids that digital photos have significance, to treat them with care. And then for younger kids to blur out faces. There's technology now with AI that can do that, or you can put emojis over their faces. Just little tips that are always helpful when we're posting pictures of our family. Since AI can do anything with anybody, this post talked about how sometimes photos of our young children are being exploited for horrible reasons now online, and we need to be careful. In news number 3, again from the Washington Post, there was an article about how ChatGPT, which is owned by OpenAI, is aiming for ChatGPT 4, which is the next release of this. And OpenAI reports that this is getting closer now to what is called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. AGI is this AI now achieving human-like cognitive abilities, which I'm sure is a little bit scary to many of us, as it should be, right? This is way out of control. Now, what was also reported in this article is that OpenAI has created a new safety committee that is also chaired by the CEO of OpenAI, which is Sam Altman, which is a horrible conflict of interest. It's never worked in business, it's never worked in life, that the one who is incentivized to make something big and powerful monetarily is also the one holding it accountable. We know that money always wins in that. This needs to be an independent commission. that has rules that everybody who is creating AI needs to be governed by. So, again, just more news about that. As we've reported before, we've written a lot about deep fakes in AI that you can read in our 15 tips for parents in a post that we created, and that's going to be in the caption or the description. All right, in article number 4 here, I want to talk about the Telegram app. Now, Telegram isn't an app that a lot of parents are aware of, and not a lot of kids, at least here in the US, use it, but it is very popular in certain countries, and especially overseas, where certain authoritarian governments maybe can spy or look in on what people are sharing online. Telegram is an end-to-end encrypted environment, which is essentially makes all the communication blind. And this is the problem. So the report that we saw from the Wall Street Journal related to how this app is being used to spread a massive amount of mis and disinformation. So, as many of you maybe know, recently the Slovakian president, who is pro Russia, was shot. Now, he survived, but there was a ton of misinformation and conspiracy theories that went around related to this. Now, they were all debunked, of course, but of course, that doesn't matter. Nobody can touch the information in there. Even the European Union, which has all kinds of new authority when it comes to governing online content in apps, can't do anything in an end-to-end encrypted environment like Telegram. There's even been reports of the Kremlin engaging criminals to carry out all kinds of sabotage and activities, and it's all done through Telegram. So we have a situation where you can't do anything to the bad guys. They have this place. It's essentially a little bit of the dark web right there on our smartphones, readily available as a 17 plus, basically social media app that anybody can download. So parents, please be aware, we've written about Telegram. We've had a post about this app for years that you can check by clicking on the link that's in the caption or the description. Article number 5, Nebraska has added its name to a long list of states who are suing social media platforms to the harms related to the harms that they are causing in the lives of children. Right. So what happens is a lot of states through education are bearing the cost of so many of the mental health harms that are showing up in the lives of kids. Now we know parents have a massive responsibility here and need to be doing so much more to control the amount of screen time and the digital places where their kids are spending time. But that all falls then into the schools where they're having to deal with it. Now schools aren't innocent. They could be doing so much more to remove screens and to control technology more. But Nebraska is specifically suing TikTok because of what they call it, I quote here, a sophisticated gambling machine, and it also alleges deceptive trade practices. This is one of many states who are now suing, whether it's Meta, Snapchat, or TikTok, related to what it's doing to kids. So there's no such thing as waiting too long. Delay is the way, is still the way, which you've heard us say many times. Article number 6 here from the Wall Street Journal deals with a really sensitive topic related to school shootings. And so if that's something that's difficult for you, you're going to want to move on. But in this article, it talks about how a lawsuit from the parents of children who were killed in the Uvalde school massacre back in 2022, where they brought a lawsuit together filed in California and Texas against 3 different parties, against the manufacturer of Call to Duty, the first-person shooter video game, against Instagram, and against Daniel Defense, who is the manufacturer of the AR-15 that was used by Salvador Ramos during the shooting. And what the suit alleges is that Call of Duty groomed this young man during his teen years to be someone who was okay with violence, and then targeted advertising from Daniel Defense that showed up in Instagram because these are the types of posts that Salvador was looking at. Also, then conditioned him to want to go buy the firearm, which he did immediately after his 18th birthday. He went and bought this firearm that he used at the school. Now, whether or not the suit is successful, what this article points to me is that young brains see too much mature and overwhelming and violent and extreme content way too soon. And of some of them, it can cause them to do horrible things. It disrupts their lives because they neurologically don't have a file, don't have a spot to put information ahead of schedule. Now, we've written extensively about this idea ahead of schedule. We recently posted it on my Substack, which is called Childhood Unwired. It's a place to write a little more in depth there'll be a link for the article that talks about specifically YouTube and TikTok as two apps I think parents completely underestimate when it comes to kids seeing too much too soon ahead of schedule. You can read more by tapping on the link in the description or the caption. And finally, article number 7 here, if I can get my numbers right, number 7 was written by Ravi Ivey, who is a professor, data scientist, and moral psychologist. And he wrote a post that focuses on something that is near and dear to my heart. And that is what Apple, Google, and device manufacturers and those who own operating systems could be doing in terms of protecting children from content that they're not ready to see. We always focus on the apps doing more, which is necessary, but every single device knows the age of its user based on the Apple ID that's used to download the app in the first place. And that could be a signal or a token or something that is used so that only apps that are appropriate and apps that have parental consent are downloaded by kids. Because did you know that every time you download an app, you actually enter into a contract with a provider? And well, you shouldn't be doing that with minors, right? And so what Ravi here talks about is, yes, focusing on the device. And we agree. I co-authored legislation with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation called the Child Device Protection Bill, landmark legislation that was passed in Utah, and we were close in a few other states that would hold the manufacturers and the owners of operating systems accountable for knowing the age and sharing that information so that better decisions can be made where kids are spending time. So I'm actually looking forward to connecting with Ravi based on this article. We've traded some messages back and forth so that he and I can explore this idea in more detail. So friends, there you go. That is this week's Tech News and Trends for May 30th, 2024. Please stay connected to us here at Protect Young Eyes by following us here on social media, but also if you're watching us on YouTube by clicking and subscribing so that you are notified when we drop in more videos. Take care.